TikTok also announced its first ever U.S. awards show called the TikTok Awards. What else? And some of the award nominees include Alex Earl, Alex Warren, and Adam W.
You remember the Timothée Chalamet lookalike contest? The YouTuber.
How could I forget?
Which spawned so many others. So the YouTuber behind that, Anthony Patero, he co-founded a new marketing company that he launched this week called Pufferfish, which will help brands make viral ads. Hi, Jasmine.
Hey, Kaya.
We are in New York this week in a brand new studio that opened this week from Ginny Media, which is the amazing production company that edits our podcast.
And we're the first to use the studio,
which is so exciting. We are inadvertently matching the studio as well and each other. People always are like, do you plan your outfits? And
we do not.
No,
Once we did. At South by we did.
But not when we showed up in the same outfit at MIPCOM.
No, that was crazy.
That was crazy. But we are in New York this week for the opening of the Lighthouse. For those of you that don't know the Lighthouse, it is part of the Whaler Group. And I like to think of it as like Soho House meets co-working space and YouTube Studios, if you remember YouTube Studios. So it has production facilities. It's really designed for the creator economy. So we're super excited to be part of the opening festival. After this, we have our fireside chat and a little happy hour to kind of soft launch Scalable and what we're doing. So we're excited to see some of our new subscribers.
It's also a very cool location. It's the pencil factory, the old pencil factory in Greenpoint. So Kai and I were lucky enough to see some of it as it was getting ready, or as
with
they were
no walls,
with no walls and barely any ceiling. So I'm excited to see what it looks like now. But we do have a lot to get to today, including big tech earnings. We're also going to be talking about Netflix's new push into podcasts. But last week, we also promised to share a little bit more about what we've been up to for the past month or so. So why don't we start there? Because it's been quite a roller coaster for both of us.
So much has happened. So I left about 2 months ago from my job from The Information. My lease was ending in New York. I've been in New York for 10 years. And I put my stuff into storage and was like, I'm going to be a nomad and spend some time in Europe. So I was in Sicily, I was in Mallorca, and just like unplugged for a month, which was very needed. My screen time was like 1 hour a day. And I was like, this is great.
Was that hard?
No, I just didn't look at my phone. Like the only thing I needed it for was like Google Maps and like taking some pictures. So that was really fun. And then over the past month, we've been like really busy and heads down, and keeping obviously everything super quiet about what we're doing. So after my little European jaunt, I flew to LA to see you and really get started and work on Scalable.
Yeah, and keeping everything quiet was really difficult because a lot of people suspected once I had left eMarketer about a month after you left The Information. I actually spent my last day in Brazil on stage, which was just such an incredible end to a 13-year career. But it was crazy because I had also just moved house a couple of days before that. And then a couple of weeks later, I jetted off to MIPCOM, where you were as well, at Cannes. And there it was even more difficult to keep things quiet because we saw so many people from the industry. And with you and I there together, I mean, I think a lot of people started to piece it together and we just kind of had to lead them in a different direction. And I don't know how successful we were at that.
Either. And for those of you that don't know MIPCOM, it's a conference that happens in Cannes, same place as Cannes Lions, but it's really focused on TV show buying and it's very European focused. So definitely had a European focus, but this was the first year that they really focused on the creator economy. They had creators involved and they had programming focused on the creator economy. So you can sort of see, it was very emblematic of the moment we're in, where these traditional areas are trying to figure out how to integrate the creator economy.
It was also very content driven, much more so than Cannes Lions.
And like a lot of deal making.
There was a lot of deal making, but it was so interesting to see that at least the creator economy sessions that I attended and the AI related sessions that I attended, like they were full rooms and people were taking notes, they were taking pictures, they were really engaged and wanted to learn. I think at Cannes Lions, it's much more show and spectacle. It's a lot hotter, which it was so nice to be in Cannes with it not being 100 degrees.
And like everything not being super crowded, which was good. Yeah, so we did that, which was fun.
That was a lot of fun. And the other thing that was really interesting though about MIPCOM was YouTube, right? Because YouTube was a big partner this year. There was so much press about them.
And there was this big lead up. It was like YouTube is going to be the star of MIPCOM. And then
but it didn't really feel that way. Like, yes, of course, like there was content around YouTube. They hosted a happy hour that was very well attended. But I think maybe just in comparison to how big they go at Cannes Lions, it felt very muted, right?
Yeah, and they were sort of in the back of the palais,
They
so
were.
the main kind of
Yeah.
area. So it sort of was still like, okay, the creator economy is still, a little bit to the
Yeah.
side, even though everyone knows
And
it's
their
such a big
tagline
force.
was so interesting, "Let's
Yes.
stream together,"
Yes.
and I think that was also just
The
very
first time we've
emblematic
seen
of
that, yeah.
the audience that was there, and,
Yes.
obviously, YouTube has become such a big threat to many of these traditional, media businesses and, kind of promoting this kind of convergence, right,
Yeah.
between the digital and the traditional world,
Yeah.
even through that tagline was just really fascinating.
Yeah. So now we're transitioning into being founders,
Yes.
which is totally different. And I think we have the advantage of like covering the space and knowing people in the space and being able to like reach out to people for advice, but it's very different actually doing it. And I think this launch and having partners and help from Beehive to the Lighthouse, I don't think we would have been able to pull this together in a
In a
month
month? No
otherwise.
way. I
No.
mean, there were so many things that we just didn't even know to ask or didn't know
Yes.
would be an issue, and, we had so much IT support, which I think
Yes.
was
Oh my
critical.
gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
even getting the newsletter out, I mean, we had a point person from Beehive who is incredible and making sure that everything ran smoothly because that's not either of our strong suits, and I don't even
No.
know where to
Yeah.
start on some of those things.
Yes. Yeah.
So it really has been I mean, we spent so much time saying that being a creator isn't easy,
Yeah.
and now that we're on the other side and actually practitioners and trying to build a business in this industry, it's become so much clearer to me that it truly is. It looks a lot easier than it
Yes.
actually is.
No, totally.
But it's also a lot of fun.
Yes, it is fun, and it's exciting, it's
Yeah.
re-energizing, and it's fun to kind of decide and build this and think about what this will be. Okay, let's get into the news. It has been a very busy 2 weeks for earnings, as well as for us, but also for big tech companies. What have been kind of your top takeaways from the earnings that have been released?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it seems that the digital ad market is strong, all things considered. I mean, investors obviously weren't happy with Meta's hefty AI
Mhm.
spending, but its core business grew by 26%. We also saw YouTube's ad revenue growth accelerate to 15%, both of which are strong signals for the state of, the ad market. That doesn't mean necessarily that every platform did quite as well. I mean, there was less talk about economic volatility this time
Do you think that's
around.
just priced in at
I
this
think it's
point? Yeah.
priced in for a lot of advertisers at this point. That doesn't mean it's not weighing on ad
Mhm.
budgets. Pinterest talked about it on the
Yeah.
call. They said that they had more muted growth in Q3 because of some tariff related challenges. They also issued pretty disappointing guidance for Q4, which sent its stock down about 20%.
Yeah.
But I think advertisers are doing what they always do whenever there's economic
Mhm.
uncertainty, and that means consolidating more of their spending into bigger platforms like Meta, like YouTube.
Let's dive into Meta a little bit more. So we had the hefty AI spending, which is not new, right? They've been talking about how much they've been investing in AI, and then we also saw a Reels milestone, which was really interesting.
Yeah, so on the AI front, I think a lot of what happened or the stock reaction specifically was due to optics, right? You're
Mhm.
right. Meta has been spending on AI for a long time. It is certainly not the only company that's ramping up spending in that sector, but Meta executives spent so much time on the call talking about sort of more futuristic
Mhm.
applications of AI. They talked
Investors don't like that too
Yeah,
much.
no, they can think very short term,
Yeah.
right? They didn't focus as much on what's happening within their business right now, how their ad business is benefiting from AI. To be fair, we have heard that story so many times.
Mhm.
And the 26% revenue growth shows that it has been able to turn AI
Yeah.
into a growth engine for its core business. But if you put that into the context of some of the recent fumbles that Meta has had, like Mark Zuckerberg's failed AI glasses demo at Meta Connect in
Mhm.
September, I think investors were just looking for more here.
Mhm. And we didn't hear much about creators at all, but we did hear about
No,
Reels, and they
we
did
did hear
have
about
quite a
Reels.
big milestone
They
that they
did.
shared.
Meta said that Reels now has an annual revenue run rate of $50 billion.
This
And
is across their apps,
this
so
is
not
across
just
their apps.
Instagram,
It's
yeah.
Facebook and Instagram. But for context, TikTok generated about $26 billion in ad revenue last year, according to eMarketer estimates. YouTube was at about $36 billion,
Yeah.
according to its company reports. So if Meta were to spin off Reels into a standalone app, which I think you were the first
Yes,
to
yes. We
report,
broke that news with the
yes.
information that they were thinking about it. I mean, this was during the TikTok ban, so I think they
Mhm.
were they were thinking strategically. It was also during the FTC trial, but who knows? They might still do it.
Yeah, but I think, if they were to, it could very easily be the biggest short form video app out there based on ad revenues, assuming, of course, it continues on the same trajectory.
What did we hear from YouTube? We heard some interesting things around shorts, I thought.
Yes. So YouTube spent some time talking about shorts and how shorts now earns more revenue per watch hour than long form video,
Just in the US, though.
just in the
Yeah.
US.
That's so interesting to me because
Mhm.
I think that's a positive because I think for so long investors and kind of industry folks in the creator economy were skeptical that short form could be as lucrative as long form advertising. I think what we don't know is how that's translated to creators because the way they share revenue on shorts is different than long form, but it seems like a positive signal. And I think it just takes a while sometimes. Like with stories, we had the same story, right? Like it just took a while for them to monetize stories in the same way.
And same with Reels, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Reels was released in 2020, so it's
Yeah.
been, about 5 years for it to reach this point. I think, you're right, there was a lot of skepticism around shorts. I think it's very interesting that YouTube chose to highlight that this quarter. I mean, goes to show that they're really focusing on shorts, but they're also focusing on the living room. So,
Which to me feels at odds, but
yes,
they'll tell you no because they're like, people watch shorts on TV. I don't.
I do not.
I think it's a horrific experience actually, but and they're working on the product, but I think you can sort of see their core priorities, like living room, YouTube TV, subscriptions,
Well, I
shorts.
think they're trying to be a little bit of everything to
Yeah.
everyone, right? And
Mhm.
that is kind of what YouTube is. And I
Yeah.
think that's been one of the biggest challenges for it as a business is that everybody uses YouTube a little bit differently. It's the number one place for podcasts. Some people watch it on their TVs, some people watch it on their phones, some people are watching shorts, others are watching long form video. Some people are now watching live sports. I mean, I know I did when the first NFL broadcast that they
Although if you
had
have
on.
ESPN on
Yeah.
YouTube TV right now, you are not watching
No,
it because they're
true.
locked in a fee
It's
dispute.
true. But I think that makes it so popular among consumers, but for advertisers who've long held off in investing as much in YouTube, a lot of it is because they just don't know how to bucket it. What is it? Is it a social media app? Is it a podcasting app now? Is
Yeah.
it, a streaming TV app? And obviously all of that is converging and people don't
Yeah.
think about it that way, but just because of the way that advertiser budgets are set up, they have to.
Yeah. Another one, I didn't pay too much attention to Netflix earnings in past years, but now I have been because they've started
Mhm.
talking about creators on the calls.
Which is
Or
a shift.
yes, which is a huge shift. Obviously, they're going much deeper into video podcasting now. But what stood out to you kind of on the Netflix side?
Well, one thing that was really interesting was that, their ad revenue grew really
Hmm.
quickly. Now, Netflix spent a long time saying that they would
Yeah.
never release ads, and of course, we know that they've had an ad-supported tier for quite some time. I also found it fascinating just how much they were talking about creators. They talked about Mark Rober. They also talked about their new deal with Spotify, which I'm super curious for your take on, actually.
Yes. I think what's so interesting is earlier this year, I think it was on one of their earnings calls early this year, Netflix like made this proclamation like, we want to get into video
Mhm.
podcasting. So I was doing some digging around that time, like in May, June, and I'm like calling agents and like people that work with creators, and they're like, yeah, where are these Netflix deals? Like, what's happening? Like, nothing was really happening at that time. And then this week, Hollywood Reporter reported that like CAA, WME, UTA, all these agents are now getting requests from Netflix. They're in discussions now with iHeartRadio to also license shows. And I thought what was so interesting about this deal with The Ringer and Spotify is that those podcasts, those video podcasts cannot be on YouTube. I mean, one, like Netflix must be giving something really exciting for them to give up that revenue. But it was really a contrast to what I was hearing earlier this year. I published a story about kind of how YouTube was, or how Netflix was trying to woo YouTubers. And they were coming to YouTubers with these deals and saying, we want exclusive content. Like, what
Mhm.
if you wait a week or wait X amount of time to post your YouTube video? And it was a non-starter for so many of these YouTubers because they don't want to do anything to mess up the YouTube algorithm, the monetization. Like, they've been on YouTube for a long time.
But there's so much prestige that comes with being
Yes.
on Netflix, and I think that's
Yes.
a big part of it. I went to, YouTube's For Your Consideration event for the Emmys earlier this year, and Rhett and Link, from Good Mythical Morning were on stage. They were up for a primetime Emmy, I believe, and they were asked by the interviewer, "Why do you want this?" And they're like, "Because we do." And I
Yeah.
think for so many creators, even though YouTube is a place where they know they have to be, right?
Yes.
It's where their core audience is, it's generally where they're monetizing. The idea of being, on Netflix next to, shows from Hollywood studios.
Yes.
It has a
It's
sense
a
of
stamp,
legitimacy
yes.
and prestige, right?
It's also sort of a stamp of approval, and I think we've seen this time and time again, especially with Netflix, where it's like, think about Friends, right? Like, it found a whole new audience with Gen Z and just, like, had this huge revival by coming onto Netflix. But I think with YouTubers, they're still yes, they want the legitimacy, but they're like, "Okay, but it has to be good terms for me." So that's
Right.
what's so interesting, I think, to me about the podcast deals being different, and we'll see how the iHeartRadio deals pan out, but they're obviously willing, some of the podcasters are willing to obviously give up the YouTube revenue.
How long do you think we're gonna keep calling them podcasts?
I know. Well, it's like podcast, YouTube
I
creator,
know.
like all these things, like it
They're
just all
converging. Yeah.
morphs
It's
into
all
like they're just
content.
shows.
Yeah.
They're shows really at the end of
Exactly.
the day. So I'm excited to see what Netflix does. I mean, the other interesting piece of this is that so many of the big podcasters signed deals last year. So Alex Cooper with
Mhm.
Sirius, Joe Rogan with Spotify. And a lot of these deals were just focused on advertising rights. So it will be interesting to see, can like Netflix come into an Alex Cooper and do some sort of exclusive video deal with her on Netflix? Like, we kind of have to see what happens there. And we're already seeing Ashley Flowers' company, Audio Chuck. She is the extremely popular host of a true crime podcast. They just announced a big deal with Tubi
Mhm.
to have their video episodes go on Tubi, which also I think that is a very key company to watch because they are going really big into creator economy initiatives and work with creators. And that deal was 150 million. And if you think about Alex Cooper's Sirius XM deal for Unwell, that was 100 million. So there's also huge opportunity, I think, with video from a revenue standpoint too.
I wanted to talk also a little bit about that Bloomberg article that you sent me because it feels like there's just so much momentum around podcasting right now, but also there are people out there who say that the medium needs a bit of a reinvention.
Yes. Yeah.
And, there's been
I was happy to read that
I
because
mean, I was too on a personal level.
the story basically said like hosts are doing monologues
Yes.
and like having co-hosts and like not wanting to recycle the same guests over and over again. And I think when we were thinking about our show, like it's not that we'll never have guests, but we were like, that's not the
We're
core
gonna be
way
very
that we want.
specific about the
Yes.
guests that we choose.
Yes. So I
And
was like, oh, okay.
yeah.
We're like kind of accidentally
Yes.
on the trend, but that was just sort of our gut feeling of how we wanted to do this.
And I think for me, like, that just stood out to me as, like, the saying that everybody has a podcast now, right? And so many of them are just single hosts who are having, a monologue with their audience or bringing on the same guest. I think the example
Yeah.
that was given in the article was, when an author goes on a book tour and then
Yes.
basically just appears on every single podcast.
Yes.
And so I think, now we have gotten to this point within podcasts that there is a moment where there could be a little bit more of a shakeup.
Yeah, and I think like, even if you look at Alex Cooper, right? Like, I think
Mhm.
she's always a good example of what's happening, but, like, she's had killer A-list guests, like, one
Mhm.
after the other, but she also is doing solo episodes and kind of speaking to, like, her core audience about, like, different issues that I think are important to her core, so she's actually doing both also, which is interesting. Okay, so before we sign off, we're gonna do a little rapid fire of headlines of what you should know from this week.
You can also find these in our newsletter.
Yes, these are stolen from our newsletter. So, okay, we alluded to this, but Google and Disney are locked in a fee dispute over
Mhm.
YouTube TV. Disney tried to appeal to YouTube by saying, like, okay, let ABC be live for election night. Google said no, and that people can tune into election coverage lots of places, and that it would be confusing to customers to bring it back. So we'll see how things pan out there with the dispute there.
TikTok also announced its first ever US awards show called the TikTok Awards. What else?
Yep.
It's going
Also with Tubi.
also with
Tubi's live
Tubi, yes,
streaming.
and it'll take place on December 18th at the Hollywood Palladium in LA. And some of the award nominees include Alex Earl, Alex Warren, and Adam W. I'm very interested about the Tubi partnership with this.
Yes.
And,
I'm
hopefully,
very curious. Hopefully they'll give us some answers
yes,
on that. We'll
we did
follow up.
ask.
As part of earnings, Spotify announced that there are now almost 500,000 video podcasts on Spotify and that more than 390 million users have now streamed a video podcast on the platform. So that's more than double almost double. We'll say roughly double from June of last year when they had about 250,000 video podcasts. So something's working with the video podcast.
Something is working. Whatnot, a live shopping startup, raised $225 million in Series F funding, co-led by DST Global and Capital G at a valuation of $11.5 billion. That is more than double its valuation in January.
And Whatnot is one of those companies that I've been tracking for a while because I think it was 2021, they raised 3 rounds of funding in 1 year. And
Yeah.
again, this is now in 2025, they've raised 2 massive rounds of funding. So I think the startup ecosystem has been really shaky on the creator economy side, but we're starting to see kind of some of these big winners start to emerge. And I think what's interesting about Whatnot is it started really with like collectibles, like physical collectibles. And it's a different type of creator because it's people that are selling stuff online, and yes, it's entertaining, but, like, it's sort of like an Etsy shop.
I find the
Um,
live shopping space to just be
I
so
know,
fascinating.
and
I
it's
mean,
had so many stops and
it
starts.
has had so many stops
Yeah,
and starts. I mean, TikTok is the first one to really start to make it work, but it's interesting to
yeah,
see, a startup like Whatnot really being able to raise that kind of money,
I
and
know,
there seems to be investor appetite for it at least.
especially in this economy, and
I
I
know.
don't think they're doing anything with AI. Okay, Rolling Stone magazine, I thought this was an interesting example because 'cause they're using past interviews they've done, so conversations with Bob Dylan, Ray Charles, Eddie Murphy, all these big names, and they're turning it into a new video podcast series on YouTube. So I think this is such an interesting playbook for legacy media companies. Like, they have so much amazing content that they are now trying to reformat, I think, for the modern era. So we'll see how that turns out.
Steven Bartlett, host of the Diary of a CEO podcast, announced last week that his holding company, Steven.com, closed new funding, which was led by Slow Ventures, and Apeiron closed new funding that values his company at $425 million. Diary of a CEO, for context, has more than 13 million YouTube subscribers and is ranked number 19 in Spotify's top podcasts. I mean, that was a big moment for the creator economy,
Yeah.
especially for the creator economy in Europe. I think it was one of
Yeah.
the largest valuations that we've seen, at least out of that region.
And then if you remember the Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest, the
How could I
YouTuber
forget?
which spawned so many others. And so the YouTuber behind that, Anthony Patero, he co-founded a new marketing company that he launched this week called Pufferfish, which will help brands make viral ads. So he's really using that Timothy Chalamet success and running with it.
And our last one is so cute, and I'm so excited to read it out. But Make-A-Wish requests to meet influencers have more than doubled in the past 10 years, according to Axios. And those requests now make up 32% of the wishes granted by the nonprofit within the entertainment industry, which is the second biggest category behind music.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't, and we'll see you back next week.
And see some of you at the Lighthouse later.
Yay!